Hello and welcome to Big Lee's Miniature Adventures, home of the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee, and today I want to talk about yet another return to face-to-face wargaming. So back in June last year I did a video about a tentative return to face-to-face wargaming here in the UK, and here we are again with me doing another UK centric video about the recent changes that were announced, or tentative changes that were announced by the government earlier this week. The government has revealed a roadmap to reopening the country, and you may have views one way or the other on that, but what it does do is it gives us a set of tentative dates that we can try to think of, plan out what might happen over the next couple of months. All of these dates are tentative, they're all reliant supposedly on the science. Time will tell, but what I thought I would do is run through some of those dates that are in that roadmap document and talk about what it might mean for our hobby, both in terms of the industry and personal gaming. So once again, we have this tantalising possibility of a return to face-to-face wargaming, and maybe even some shows later in the year. Now, before I go on to look at the dates, it is worth stating before I start any of this that it is still at this stage completely unclear what safety protocols will be relaxed and what won't. So, how long are we going to be continuing to do social distancing, hand washing, ventilation, increased ventilation, face coverings. They're not really covered in this document as far as I can find, so I'm expecting to see some finesse, some detail on that as time goes by. In theory, all social restrictions would be ending by the latter part of June, but some of these measures may still be in place. And bear in mind, we've yet to see the end of COVID. There could well be a reintroduction of some safety measures in the autumn, or the fall as the Americans like to call it, here in the UK. Now, however, there are some measures that are detailed in the roadmap, and the main thing that I wanted to really focus on in today's video was really those dates. They're very tentative, they're very reliant on certain tests being met before progress to the next step. There's a political element to this, so whether those dates are tentative or fixed is yet to be seen, and there will always be pressure for the government to either go faster or to go slower, depending on which camp you fall into. So the first date to look out for is the 29th of March. Now, to be honest, it's going to have a limited impact on our hobby at this stage. The rule of 6 will return to people meeting outdoors, so unless you're playing lawn war games, it's probably not going to help your hobby in with your friends. Travel is still going to be minimal, so travelling to meet friends any great distance is probably still going to be not allowed, and of course venues are still going to be closed. In effect, the stay-at-home rule will still be in place at the 29th of March. So as usual, it's going to be more solo games and web-based activities. Then, in theory, 5 weeks later, no earlier than the 12th of April, the rule of 6 or 2 households will still be able to meet outside, but all retail will open, which will mean game shops. So we could see the opening of game shops from about middle of April. Now, I'd imagine that a lot of that is going to depend on what their business model is. If they have a large element of in-store gaming, that's not going to be allowed. So, are these businesses necessarily going to be open? I'm hoping that most game shops will be able to open to start getting footfall through their doors again. Now, outdoor attractions, some outdoor attractions are going to open. That maybe means some open air museums may open. It's a bit unclear, to be honest, but that's something that I'm hoping for. And some events are going to be piloted, but they're likely to be music events, things like that. So again, they're not really going to impact on our hobby. Then a minimum of 5 weeks after step 2 comes step 3, so no earlier than the 17th of May. And this is where things really change and start to impact on our hobby. Suddenly, a maximum of 30 people can meet outdoors. So I mean, that won't necessarily impact on our hobby, but maybe you can have some big lawn games as the weather gets better. More importantly, the rule of 6, 2 households can start to meet indoors, so the possibility of limited face-to-face gaming with friends returns. I'm looking forward to that date myself. And then indoor entertainment and attractions will also open approximately at the same time. So that means museums are going to be open. Oh, am I looking forward to that date. Indoor events of less than 1,000 people or 50% of normal capacity will start. So that means that some small shows could in theory take place, although whether they would be able to organise at such a late date, because we won't know until a week before whether these dates are actually going to go ahead. It may take a while for shows to resume, but in theory small shows could resume from the 17th of May. And then they're also opening up larger outdoor events, but again that's not really going to impact on our hobby. Then we come to step 4, again a minimum of 5 weeks after the last stage and no earlier than the 21st of June, but of course it's only going to take one of those earlier steps to be delayed slightly and this date will get pushed back, but at the moment the 21st of June is when most things change for us. They've got to give a minimum of 1 week's notice if a date is being extended, but so it's impossible to say whether this 21st of June is a fixed date or not. We will find out when we get there. But this is the date that we're all really looking at because it's entirely dependent, as I say, on those earlier stages going to plan. This is when no limits on social contacts come into place. So basically the end of social distancing or limiting of social contacts. Remaining businesses can open, so that should mean the return of clubs. Larger events means all shows can resume without limits necessarily on capacity. Now there's a big caveat here because it's still unclear, as I said right at the beginning of this video, what safety measures may still be in place. They might still require they may still put in limits on capacities or restrictions such as face coverings and social distancing and so on. Personally, I'm quite happy with that if it means the shows can go ahead. The likelihood is, again, as with the earlier stage, it's going to take a while for the bigger shows to catch up because they're going to have these things don't just turn up on and work immediately. They all take a lot of planning and there's a lot of uncertainty that comes before that. But in theory, from the 21st of June, large shows can resume. And as I keep hinting at, this roadmap is full of caveats and there's plenty of room for ambiguity, so a lot could change. But I'm trying to be optimistic. So in theory, things should return to normal for our hobby from the 21st of June. So I've mentioned caveats. All of what I've previously told you, all these dates, is dependent on several important factors. Firstly, the science. The document that the government put out makes it clear that they are going to basically base their decisions about going to the next step based on the science, or so they say. That remains to be seen. So there's going to be things like how many cases are, infection rates, the R rate that we all know about now. But pressuring against that, of course, is going to be the politics of it. There's going to be pressure from both directions. The people, the libertarians who want everything opened, and the very cautious people who want to keep those measures in place for longer. Without getting too political, don't be surprised if you see U-turns, amendments or delays. It's been like that for a year. There's been plenty of U-turns, amendments and delays in the last year, and I expect there will be more in the coming months. The other thing all this is dependent, of course, is on the vaccine. It's the main thing that is in the document that talks about the vaccine rollout going well and uptake going well. So, participation from the general public is vital to get those vaccine rates up and immunity going so that they can then bring in all these other measures into place. Now, I try to keep politics off of the site. I have my opinions about the current government, but we won't go there. But what I will say is if you're an anti-vaxxer, you might as well unsubscribe now, because I wholeheartedly believe in the vaccine. No debate. I'm not going to get into a conversation with anyone about it. If you get offered your vaccine, go and take it. It's not just for your good, it's for everyone else's good. Anyway, that's it. Politics bit over. So in theory, if all goes to plan, we could see a return to normality for our hobby and for everything else by the summer. So what does all of this mean for shows and events? You know, as I said, in theory, they could be resuming from the 21st of June, but the big question is, will they still go ahead? I know that large shows like Salute and Warfare are allegedly confirmed and lined up ready for later in the year, and I really have my fingers crossed that they will go ahead. Some smaller events may be able to go ahead because they take a little bit less planning, so I'm hoping to see some of the smaller show circuits, particularly down here in the southeast where I live. I'm hoping to see them going again. But then there's loads of questions that have to be asked, and you know, I haven't got the answers to those. You know, will the insurance costs be higher for these sort of events? Will the venues that they normally use still be viable businesses and taking those sort of shows inside? You know, will all the traders actually want to go back to the old way? Because a lot of them seem to have said they've done quite well through their internet sites and so on. They've, you know, their business has been solid. Will they really want to go back to spending out money on attending shows? Don't really know. It's a question that doesn't seem to have been addressed in any of the forums and so on that I've been looking at. I mean, I'm sure there's a load more questions that could be discussed in the future, and I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 videos on the subject as the months go past. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting and maybe a little bit useful, maybe not. If you enjoyed it, as always, please like, subscribe and share. Next week, I'll be getting on my soapbox and talking about photography bans in museums, a subject that does get my blood boiling. So until then, I hope you're getting in as many games as you can, stay safe, and of course, keep rolling high.